Everybody, welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in. I've got an amazing guest for you guys today. We have an Olympic athlete in our midst, and there's a couple of friends that I have that have competed in the Olympics, and man, it takes such a high level of competition. But Riley Tejcek, who's a captain in the Marines, which that in and of itself is a huge accomplishment, captain or pilot of the bobsled team for the US Olympics. So all of those things are super high level. That's really what drew me to the content that you were putting out, Riley. And those are some amazing accomplishments. And you're not old. You're in your 20s. So like that's a lot. That's a lot to accomplish in a short amount of time. So obviously you're an individual who likes to accomplish things at a high level. So I wanted to bring you on just to kind of talk about how you found success. Why bobsledding? I know nothing about bobsledding other than you guys go stupid fast, and I don't know, water slides for me are already pretty fast. So you guys go a lot faster than that. But anyway, who are you, Riley, in a nutshell, for those that don't know who you are?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you so much for having me on. Just a couple things I just want to quickly clarify. I am not an Olympian yet. Lord willing, I will be. I am on track. I've been on the national team, so I've been on the highest ranking team, competed in world championships. But the Olympics are only every 4 years. I was way too young for the last one. And, hoping and Lord willing, we'll be on maybe the team in 2026. But yeah, a little bit about me for sure. I am 26. We're talking about my age. Just get it out there. I'm 26 years old. I'm a captain in the United States Marine Corps, stationed right now in Quantico, Virginia. And in addition, I'm also a member of Team USA Bobsled as a pilot, as mentioned. I absolutely love this sport. This was not my first sport. I was actually a college softball player. I played softball my whole life and transitioned to the sport recently. In addition, I was Miss Military 2023, so I guess I still am, as the years continuing on and flying by. And then last fun fact, my mom and I was on a game show, and we end up winning in March. So that has already been out, so it's old news, but I like to wear a lot of hats. I like to do a lot of crazy things, and I'm really excited to talk to you guys today.
Yeah, no, that's even more adding to the resume right there. And being 26, I mean, that's most 26-year-old resumes is like flipping burgers and a half done degree in college. So I mean that's impressive. That's awesome. So let's get started with, I mean, you were an athlete your whole life, and I don't even know, how do you get started into bobsledding? It looks like an adrenaline rush. I don't know if I would I don't know if I would ever do it. Like I said, that's stupid fast how you guys are racing. And but you started with softball.
Mhm.
What position did you play in softball?
I was middle infield, but I like to be able to say I could do anything but pitch and catch, really. So freshman year, they kind of threw me everywhere, but traditionally, I recognize myself as a middle infielder.
Nice. Very nice. Well, so then you played college athletics as a softball player, and then how did you get into bobsledding? Like, I don't see the jump there. I don't see the bridge. How does that happen?
Yeah, bobsledding is a very extreme sport. We are going extremely fast. The women will go 90 miles an hour, the men will go up to 100 miles an hour. And that's not something to take lightly, right? That's not like driving in a car. You're open, you're feeling it, a bunch of G forces, 4 to 5 Gs. Studies have shown 40 plus Gs in a crash. So this isn't a sport that we necessarily want young children to do, which is why there's not really an entry level for children, and which is why people don't really grow up bobsledding because of just the severity and what it takes. It's a very violent, aggressive sport. Um, every one of my teammates and I on Team USA has gotten into the sport from all different paths, but almost all of us have had different sports. A lot of us come from the track and field background. A lot of us come from football. Mine was softball. I'm not the only softball player, but anything that we see of like power output and speed. If you can mesh those two together, that's kind of what bobsled looks for. You look for heavy individuals that can lift a lot of weight quickly, but also push and run efficiently. So it's a 400-pound bobsled that you have to sprint and take off with and have a lot of explosive power. So how I got involved, I'm a very strong Christian. I love to say the Lord kind of led me here. But when I played softball, it was at George Washington, which is where the 5-time Olympic medalist Alana Myers-Taylor also played softball. Her jersey was retired. We knew all about her. After the 2018 games when she won silver in Pyeongchang, she had come to GW. I actually presented her an award and got these butterflies in my stomach of like, wow, like in another life, I would be a bobsledder. but I already had my trajectory set. What I thought was, going to the Marine Corps, and I wanted to give everything I had into that because I knew, especially being a female, it was not going to be easy, and I needed to give everything I had to it. So I, hung up my cleats after my last college softball game in 2019 and pursued the Marine Corps, finished the basic school, MOS school for logistics, got sent to Camp Pendleton. And once I was there, it was COVID. And I had achieved every single goal that I set for myself. And I was really stuck on what was next. And long story short, bobsled had a tryout. I saw it through Alana, and I just said, why not? And I just took a risk, and I started training for it. Just started lifting heavy again because I
Yeah.
really, after softball, made myself lean to be a Marine, um, and submitted a video and said, is this enough?
Mm. Wow, that's crazy. So, all right, there's a lot that you bring up there. So first off, George Washington, and again, I don't watch even college baseball or softball, but I know of George Washington from basketball.
Mhm.
I grew up in North Carolina. We talked about that a little bit. So growing up watching the Tar Heels, I'm still a Tar Heels boy through and through. And so I know about the basketball team. Is a softball team competitive nationally? I mean, I know George Washington's a great university, so I imagine so.
Yeah, so when I actually was selecting this university, I was more drawn to them academically because of how high this institution is valued from an academic
Mhm.
standpoint.
Oh yeah.
When I was actually recruited, they were a losing team. And I'm very drawn to places where they're like, hey, you could be an impact player.
Mm.
And that's what it was. My freshman year, we actually ended up making our conference tournament, which a lot of times was a hit or miss. We were the sixth seed to get in the last seed. And then we finished my senior year in 2019 as the first time ever for co-winning a conference championship.
Wow.
I have to say co in there. We won, but it was a co-win because of a rain delay. But I mean,
Mm.
we flipped it around in 4 years. So I'm not going to say by no means are we ever a top 25 team, but we compete against top 25 teams and sometimes really hold our own. Sometimes had beat people. But again, I think the draw for that university is drawing people academically. That's why I
Mhm.
decided to go there. I knew that. Well, I assumed that my athletic career would end after college, so I wanted to be very um, like I wanted to be very intentional on where I decided to go to school to set me up for success after.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. And I assume you played softball in high school. You didn't just
Mhm.
pick it up in college. I
Yeah.
mean, kind of have a habit of doing that. Bobsledding, you just picked it up out of nowhere, and now you're working on becoming an Olympian. But and so all right, so college softball, high degree there. You wanted to go into the Marines. What attracted you to the Marines? I know from a man perspective why a lot of men do it. I know my dad and I have talked about that a lot. He told me flat out the reason why he did it was because they had the best looking uniforms. That's pretty much it. He was like, they dress up the best, they look the best, they're the most badass guys out there. And so, from a man's perspective, I get that. But looking at that, like that's not naturally something a woman would want to get into. Basically, a locker room scenario. And so, or I guess why the Marines?
Yeah, I mean, you can't deny we do have the best uniforms, I think.
Yeah.
That
Oh
is
yeah.
definitely a common thing. But for me, it was the same thing. I tell people all the time, I never wanted to be a Marine because I never saw a female Marine. I never saw women in the military, period. I mean, I grew up in Indiana, so there's not really any major military bases around. So that wasn't something that was very common. And I met a Marine recruiter my freshman year, knowing I went to DC to I was from Indiana, going to DC I wanted to be around the political, like, capital of the world, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to know what was going on. I wanted to be involved. And so I never thought that I would be serving in the military. I always thought I would be supporting. So when I met a Marine recruiter and he's like, actually, Riley, you have a lot of these things that we're looking for. There is only 5 to 8% of women are officers in the Marine Corps. Like you would be an impact player. You would be able to come in and like be someone that people maybe don't think that you're like. For example, how I conduct myself, like being feminine and how I look and stuff may not be the perceived mold of women in the military. And I'm able to kind of go into that field. And then ultimately, you know, serving my country and being in the Marine Corps was, they were the biggest, the baddest, and the best, with the
Mhm.
highest physical fitness standards, the highest like mental fortitude that is possible. We have the least amount of things, and we're expected to be the best. And when they say the few, the proud, like that meant something to me. And so I immediately was up for the challenge. That tends to be a theme in my life. I
Yeah.
like to enter spaces where there's not a lot of people and try to bring light and awareness and populate that. You know, not
Yeah.
to say, well, I did it, but to say, if I did it, you can do it. And here's why.
You know, they have a term for people like that, and it's called trailblazers. I don't know if you've heard that before or
Oh,
not,
I love
but
it. I do.
yeah. Yeah, you definitely have that mentality of, hey, and maybe you're not the first to do it, but you're also someone who's making the path wider, you know, than
Hmm.
maybe the first women that were in the Marines as officers or whatever it may be. You have that kind of that growth mindset, which is awesome. And again, and I keep bringing this up because there's so many, and I'm only 31, you know, so we're within a couple years, but there's so many people in our generation, in our age group, between mid 20s, mid 30s, that I don't know what exactly I have an idea of what has caused it, but
Hmm.
basically there's a lot of laid back people that are like, you know, it is what it is, relying on the government for this, that, and the other, and not really pushing to make things better. And you seek that out, and that's definitely commendable that you go about doing that, and you look for the challenges and
Hmm.
you head them on, and then you know you make the situation better. So that's really awesome. And yes, Marines definitely have the best uniforms. Like that is 100%. Again, my dad's got his theories on that. I won't say that on the podcast, but uh, he's got his reasons for why that is. But anyway, that's awesome. So you go in as an officer for
Hmm.
logistics, which in and of itself is a very complicated uh, situation. And then you apply to become, or for the bobsled team. I mean, was your video? I mean, you said it was a lot of weightlifting, but was your video like going out on a hill, running as fast as you can with a sled, and like jumping, you know, to slide down the hill? Like, I mean, how do you show that you can run with a sled, pushing a sled? And, sorry, is it called a sled?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so pushing a sled for the 30 meters that you're running as fast as you can, and then hopping into it, hoping to hit the seat and flying 90 miles an hour down this course that looks like, I mean, again, you could fly off it at any minute. How do you demonstrate that in a video?
Yeah, so I mean, basically, what we're looking for is very similar to an NFL combine. We're just
Mm,
looking for, are you able to move weight quickly? Are you able to sprint? And do you maybe have the grit and the mindset to be in a violent sport, a sport that doesn't have a lot of money? You're not going to get fame. Uh, and the Olympics is a possibility, but it's one very few actually get to
mhm,
see to fruition. And so we showed a lot of sprint videos because they tell this, we need this. So I was able to give them that. So sprinting, lifting, about you, a kind of fun of your prior sport, like a highlight. And then that was just like the first phase to get an invitation to even try the sport. And
mm,
so what we do is we look for athletes that were previously in these other sports that have a lot of power output and saying, hey, could this work? A lot of times it doesn't, sometimes it does. And so I just was one of those where it stuck and I'm too stubborn enough to give it up, I guess.
yeah. So basically, do you have the building blocks that they can mold into whatever they need from you as a bobsledder? And I would agree, bobsledding definitely doesn't get a lot of fame. One, you're wearing a helmet that's covering your face, so you don't even really get to see who you are. You just see
Mhm.
people running as fast as they can with a sled, and then they zoom by the camera. You know, that's really like that's it. And so you're definitely not going into it for that reason. It just still it blows my mind that's what you chose. Like it just you don't think bobsledding for some reason. You don't think Olympics and bobsledding. I don't know. But
Yeah.
anyway, the fact that you put that together, and like you said, and I'm a firm believer in this as well, that doors open. And
Mhm.
I you know, the other thing too is that doors might open for you, and something that I've come to realize recently with some some decisions I've had to make with the business and other things going forward is sometimes there's two doors that open or that are unlocked for you, and they're both good, but
Mm-hmm.
one's better.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord will sit there and I feel like he almost plays games with me a little bit. And he's like, all right, here they are, you choose. And you go through, you do your prayers, you meditate on it and things like that. And he's still like, well, they're both here, they're both great options, but I'm gonna let you choose. And
I felt that. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And you've continuously made these choices that have put you on this path. So we get into bobsledding, and then they tell you that you need to bulk up, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so for people that don't understand, the military and the Marines, this isn't like you're not trying to be a desk officer, basically, like where you're sitting behind the scenes and you've got a gut and you're just chilling, relaxing. You're actually putting in the work and doing everything you can to excel at your PT tests and everything else that you need for your job. So you've leaned out because you're expected to do pull-ups, you're expected to run, which you don't want to carry weight, whether it's muscle or fat. People also don't understand that whatever weight you're carrying on your body still weighs you down when you're running, even if it is more muscle. It's not going to help when you're trying to run, longer distances and be an endurance athlete, which is what the Marines are requiring. So now they're telling you to bulk up about 20 pounds. So walk us through that, I guess, that experience.
Yeah, so, I felt like my whole life was, ever since college, was a lot of ups and downs and trying to figure out what made sense for my body. Being a
Mm-hmm.
college softball player, mass moves mass. And the more I have, the more I can put emphasis with my hip rotation into the ball. However, I quickly learned with the Marine Corps, a 3-mile run is like the minimum of what you have to do
Mm-hmm.
for your physical fitness test, and then you have to be able to do, for a woman right now, 12 pull-ups and a 3 45-minute plank. That's our standardized test. That's not what's required of you in combat. That's not our PT that we have every day. That's just like our minimal test that you have to be evaluated in. And so I quickly realized, like, okay, when you're, like you said, when you're running, the more weight you have, period, the harder it is. And for me, I've always had a lot of weight in my legs because of softball to get that hip rotation and everything. So I had to quickly realize that I was the heaviest my freshman year, and I quickly lost weight, which didn't help me for softball, but made me better for the Marine Corps. And again, that was my goal at the time. So I finally slimmed down to maybe like 150 and felt really good about it because, again, I'm able to pull my weight. I'm not like stick and bones. I'm very lean and
Mm-hmm.
strong, but with my body weight. And then I got on the phone with the bobsled coach, and he's like, "Wait, how much do you weigh?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm 5'7", 150." And he's like, we got girls that are 5'7" to 5'11", about 185." And I'm like, 185, and I look at these women, and when you hear 185, you might think as a female that's maybe fat. No, like they are freaking oxens. Like they are just like powerhouses, like horsepower, everything you can think of. And I was like, wow, I have a way to go. And so what was hard for me is in the Marine Corps, I have a weight that's my maximum, and it's 166. And so part of it's like, yeah, you just have to eat more. But it's taken me, what, 2 to 3 years to really get to where I'm at right now, which is 170. And it's this game I have to play with myself of like, I bulk up in season. And then when I have to do my military test, naturally that weight falls off. And I can't lift heavy. I can't squat heavy. I can't do these things because what's required of me. And so my body every year is changing. And I won't even lie to you, like, it's exhausting. Um,
Mm-hmm.
right now I'm in the phase where I'm my heaviest, and I know by the time March rolls around, I have to drop, 10 pounds, change my conditioning completely. And then when all my bobsledder athletes get to maintain and just build what they have, I have to start over again. And like, I tell people this all the time. I'm like, the Marine Corps does not mesh very well with what bobsled requires of you. Now, what's great about it is I'm very strong. So in our combat fitness tests, if we were to go to combat and you were even to get shot, I am fully confident that you at your weight, I can throw you over and move with you because I squat so much, because I'm used to like having to quickly move heavy weight and,
Mm-hmm.
and move it from a distance. But for right now, that's not what they require. So I know the Marine Corps is moving in the direction of being like, hey, our height and weight standards are a little out of date, but that doesn't mean that what's required of me is easier at this weight. So long story short, all just to say, it's a struggle every year. I go sometimes to a very dark place when I have to go from like this weight back down,
Hmm.
and then when I see where I'm light again, and I see where everyone else is, how hard it is to work back up to that.
Yeah.
Um, and injuries and stuff that come along with quick weight gain and weight loss, ultimately in different kind of training styles, right? So
Yeah.
bobsled wants me to be a lot more short distance running, quick, powerful, explosive, heavy weights. And the Marine Corps is like, hey, let's move your own body weight, long distances, be leaned out to carry yourself, just like quick side story. Pull-ups was never a problem for me when I was lighter. And now I'm 170. I used to be able to put like a 50-pound dumbbell between my legs and just
Mm.
knock them out. I can't do that because I'm carrying half of it now. So that was
Hmm.
like a big ego thing of like, oh, I'm heavier, but I'm still able to do this, but I can't add what I used to because a lot
Hmm.
of the weight is in my lower half, but it's good.
Yep. Oh yeah, I definitely understand that. It's more so it almost goes from, I mean, it is Olympic lifting and powerlifting style to calisthenics basically.
Mhm.
I mean, they're two opposite ends of the spectrum. That can, I could see that being really difficult. Now, do you naturally put on weight easy or lose weight easy?
I naturally lose weight easy. So even in the
Mm.
season when we're training, it comes off so fast. But I mean, part of that's the sport, right? Like I'm in
Yeah, yeah.
winter, so your body's working 10 times hard to keep itself warm. We always miss lunch because we always are training during then. And when we're overseas in Europe, it's actually really hard to gain weight in other countries. I think it's something to do with our food here. I won't even lie to you. But I've noticed in Europe, just the way they eat, what they eat, it's hard to actually put the weight. So all of us try to
Mm.
bulk up and be as heavy as possible because we know the second that we're overseas competing, we actually tend to lose without even
Mm.
trying.
Yeah. No.
But yeah, it's taken me years to get up to here, which is why like I really celebrated the day I hit 170. I never thought I would see that on a scale. But mind you, I'm still light because I'm still competing against girls that are 185.
Hmm.
One of my
Yeah.
teammates here is 187. Like they still have 17 pounds on me, and mass moves mass. So that 400-pound sled to me is still heavier than what it
Hmm.
is for my opponents.
Yeah. Oh wait, the sled is 400 pounds.
Yes.
Wow. All right. I didn't even think to ask that. To me, it just looks like some sheet metal over like a sled that you ride, in the snow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. No, it's a little bit more than that, but close.
well, that's man, 400 pounds. So you got two people, right?
Yep.
In a bobsled,
Hmm.
pushing 400 pounds, sprinting as hard as you can,
Hmm.
and then having to hop in and be precise about getting in your seat.
Yep.
Um, man, that's crazy. And I can see why they would want you to bulk up for that because again, that's going to allow you to travel faster as well going down the track. Not only and I guess yeah, starting the bobsled
Yeah.
is probably another big deal too. Huh. And that blows my mind. I didn't realize it was 400 pounds. That's a lot of weight to move.
Yeah. And I mean, it's on ice, so it's moving easier, right? But I mean, still, it's
Yeah.
sometimes you hit it and it knocks you back a little bit.
Yeah. I could see that. Man, and then the other thing too is so you do you have someone that is your nutritionist or like as part of the team? Do they provide that or do you have a personal one that you deal with?
Yeah, we're really blessed and fortunate. Team USA has a lot of resources and stuff for us. We do have dietitian nutritionists here. I kind of take my own approach, which is probably I'm admitting is not the best thing um, to do. I've worked with them in the past, so I've had conversations, I've had calls, but I'm not following a specific plan per se. Um, I just want to be very cautious as a female and been teammates in my past of like what it can do to count calories and
Mm.
over journal your meals. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. For me in the community that I've been in, I've seen a lot of eating disorders and stuff from it. So I just try to protect
Mhm.
my peace in that way. I have good conversations with a nutritionist about, hey, what are good meals? What are good ways of making sure I need protein? What do I really need? And how many calories roughly should I have? So I have these conversations, but I try to be very not kind to myself on not limiting myself
Yeah.
too much or over analyzing it, because I am a data nerd and I'm very fearful of what would happen sometimes if I did that. But we do have a bunch of resources here. Even the Marine Corps has a bunch of resources, and they've offered help and stuff like that. So I do body composition often, just like, hey, curious, like, where am I at? What does this look like in different parts of the season and stuff like that. But I try not to over analyze that too much.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. And I've kind of wondered recently, especially working with First Form, and talking to people. Most of the people that I work with and talk to about nutrition are men.
Mm,
But the women in my life, I kind of tread a fine line because I'm like, I don't know if I don't know why, but I feel like women are more susceptible to eating disorders
yeah.
than men.
Hmm.
And so for me, it's nothing to say, hey, I step on the scale every single when I have a goal in mind, I step on the scale every single day. I measure out my calories, my protein, my water. Like I'm again, like you're saying, the data nerd. I love going over that and seeing, okay, well, maybe I held more water here, so I need to do this. And it
Yeah.
doesn't translate to me as becoming an obsessive
Mm,
problem. And so whenever I do talk to, whether it be my daughter-in-law, well, not even my daughter-in-law, it's more my son, I'm trying not to trigger my daughter-in-law's mind of becoming obsessed about it. I don't know why that is. And that would probably be a whole nother podcast, but that's a good point, that you don't want to cause a problem. um and if it works for you, it works for you, right? For some people like me, I can't necessarily do that. I'm the opposite end, where I put on weight easy. I put on muscle and fat really
mm,
easily. So when I'm trying to trim down, I have to work kind of like the way you have to work to gain the weight back. Um, and so, yeah. Anyway, that
yeah.
nutrition's a whole nother. I could go on for hours about that. It's a
Yeah.
fun
The
and
only
interesting
thing,
topic.
yeah, that I want to like just like lastly touch on that is like I
Yeah.
think women need to talk about it.
Hmm.
I like your that's your supplement company. My supplement company's Jocko. I take supplements. I'm very intentional about what I
Great
put in my
company.
body. Um, it's just how you go about it. You just gotta see what works for the individual person. And so for me, I just
Hmm.
know that I want to protect my piece a little bit more. But I'm maybe the only female that gets excited about weight gain that I know of. I step on the scale and I get
Yeah.
excited, and people are like, "You want to gain weight?" I'm like, "Yes." Um, but it
But
all
the
depends
right
on what
weight.
people's goals are.
That's the
Correct.
thing too,
Correct.
is that you're doing body composition. I know you're showing a number of 170, but and I don't know, I'm sure you do talk to people that ask you about
Mhm.
it a little
Yeah.
bit more in depth. But the body composition thing is that when I talk to people, it's such an easy interchangeable word to say weight and fat,
Yeah.
and say I want to lose weight, when in reality you don't want to lose weight. You don't want to lose muscle mass. Even if you're a woman, which I argue with my wife about this quite a bit. I'm like, babe, I want you to keep your muscle. If you're trying to lose weight, then
Yeah.
you're looking to lose fat. You're not looking to
Right.
lose muscle, right?
Right.
And so the body, and the same thing vice versa, when you're trying to gain weight, it'd be super easy for you to go and eat 10 Big Macs a day, and like you could gain weight, right? I'm sure anyone
Yeah.
could gain weight, but it's more of the healthy weight gain that you're excited about, because you're actually putting on lean muscle, and maybe a little bit of fat with that, because that's just natural with eating more calories than you burn. But um, the lean muscle is what you're mainly focused on, which I think, and I would agree with you 100% on that. Somehow getting the education out there that it's a tool, not something that you should become obsessed with per se. Like the scale is a tool, the mirror is a tool. If you don't have a
Yeah.
body composition test available, you can take pictures for yourself and you can see over the span of a month the changes that have happened. Body composition tests are another thing. If you've got that available to you, that works really well. Um, all of those things are tools and shouldn't
Yeah.
be looked at as good or bad. It's just like a firearm, right?
Hmm.
It's neither good or bad. It's an inanimate object. It depends on who's using it, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
could. I
same thing
couldn't
with
agree
data.
more. Yeah. I
But
couldn't
for
agree more.
you, if it works, again, things that work, stick to them. Blueprint it. I talk about blueprinting a lot because that word seems to encompass a lot of things, whether it be, again, diet, nutrition, and fitness. If you
Hmm.
find something that works for you, write it down, screenshot it, whatever, and that's your blueprint for what works for you. And my blueprint isn't going to work for you, Riley, and isn't going to work for someone else, right? Just like
Right.
your blueprint isn't going to work for the girl that's 187 pounds and is actually maybe fighting to keep the weight off so that she can stay at that.
Yeah, and I think this just goes back, and I know that this isn't where we're trying to go with this, but knowing that everybody is different, and that's a good
Mm-hmm.
thing. It's not saying a bad thing. And just
Yep.
because that's my journey of gaining weight, my teammates don't have that problem. And I think knowing your body, there's not one diet plan, there's not one nutritionist, there's not one supplement company that's going to work for everybody. And so I just really challenge people to know your body, and that
Mm-hmm.
everybody, literally everybody,
Yeah.
everybody is
Mm-hmm.
different, and not something to, it's like part of the puzzle, and I can share what worked for me, you can share what's worked for you. Maybe that works for someone else, maybe it doesn't. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like a fun, to me it's like so fun because I'm a nerd, right? It's such a fun
Yeah.
puzzle to figure out, like, okay, this didn't work for you, but this worked for me, and like, what does this mean, and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Nope, I'm on board with you 100%. And yes, there's definitely other, I know you work with Jocko Fuel,
Hmm.
and they're a great company, American company. I love Origin, which he's a part of
Yep.
as well.
Yep.
And it's just it's awesome um to see that there's good, clean companies out there rather than just, I know, and you probably remember the other companies that are out there. You don't hear about them a lot anymore. I don't know if that's because I work with First Form, so all the other stuff's blocked out. I'm not sure, but you grow up with the gold standard whey protein from Costco or from all of those things, and you realize when you start working with good companies, um, and using the clean products, how much of a difference that can make in your nutrition.
Yeah.
Um, and that it is supplementation. It's not replacement, right?
Yes.
It's to
Oh,
help.
yep.
It's yeah. And that's the
You
other
took it out
thing
of my
too is
mouth.
yeah, exactly. And I people come to me and they'll ask, what are you taking? And I'm like, well, I'm going to ask you a question back. What are your goals? And then
Hmm.
I'm also going to ask you to track your food for a week if you want to work with me. And then I'm going to see where your holes are in your nutrition and we'll try and plug them. And if you can't, then we'll supplement, which is what it's for. I'm not just going
Yep.
to tell you to go take a pre-workout, take this stack, take that, take this, take that. There's education behind it. That's, a bigger deal than just trying to peddle some protein powder. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah. So that's awesome. Okay. So kind of deviated on that, but man, I'm telling you, fitness and nutrition, I could talk all day. I love it. I geek out about it. I'm not technically certified in really anything, but wanted to be a PT. Been there. Love that. But anyway, back to bobsledding. So you are moving a sled, 400-pound sled, with one other female that's weighing roughly 180, right? So combined, you guys are not even the weight of the sled
Correct. Correct.
combined, and you're running as fast as you can for 30 meters on ice, which
Hmm.
again, running on ice that just blows my mind too. Do you have cleats? Is that spikes or
Yeah, we have spikes that have 100 little small, basically like toothpicks,
hmm,
what they
okay,
look like,
kind of like
and that
golf
helps
shoes
with
but
traction.
more?
They're very expensive, and they like, no one makes them because there's very few bobsledders.
Hmm, yeah.
But yeah, they keep us from falling at least.
Hmm, hmm. Man, that's interesting. Like I'm just learning so much right now. So okay, so you're pushing this bobsled, you get up to speed, you hop in, and what are the seats like? Like, are they just like a wood like bench, or like is it like a, do you have seat belts? You don't have time to put a seat belt on. Like,
No,
there's yeah.
there's no seatbelt. You would assume it's 2023 that this would be extremely advanced technology. It's not. I don't. There's not really a seat. When I jump in, I'm sitting on the floor of the bobsled, the carbon fiber,
Hmm,
and I have a little, I guess like plastic, I guess recliner. That's just a little piece of fabric that I can at least like push into when
hmm.
I'm grabbing control. And then my brake woman behind me, there's nothing for them but little handles for them to hold on to. It's all about being aerodynamic. It's all about being quick. Yeah, the safety is paramount, but we push the limits. Um,
They say
yeah,
safety
so
is
there's
paramount. They say that. I feel like that's a catchphrase or something that they
it's a
say because that
military
doesn't
thing.
sound. Yeah, but
Yeah,
it just doesn't. It doesn't sound very safe. A
it's
slab of carbon fiber with you rocketing at 90 miles an hour down ice.
yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of injuries that come from it. The
Yeah.
crashes are nasty. But there's definitely, you know, two-sided, right? Like there's certain
Mm.
things about it that are unsafe. There's things that we're doing in every single measurable possible to make sure that they are safe. But when you have extreme sports, especially in the Winter Olympics, there are such extreme sports that are inherently dangerous. Um, and that's what makes them fun and awesome to watch. But that's what, as a competitor, you have to take that with a grain of salt. And especially in this sport, there are a lot of head injuries, head and neck injuries.
Mm.
How can we prevent concussions? How can we keep advanced technology in our helmets and be as safe as possible with what we have and what we know works, and what the sport really is? And it's come a long way from when it originated. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, it's not like this is a life or death sport, but I mean, season-ending injuries exist. And like, I've been hit and knocked out a couple times, but it's a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, it's and when you're competing at such a high level and there's so much output, it almost blows my mind just taking a step back and thinking about any sports you've ever competed in, or even for the main listeners that I have are hunters and people that get out in the outdoors. And there's been some times where I go out for a hike and then I get in a spot and I just kind of look, I'm like, hmm, how do I get back? Like, I know how to get back, but that was easier coming down, or usually it's the other way. It's easier going up than it is going down because there's not really any traction going down. And uphill, I
Right.
can crawl on all fours, right? So, like, there's things like that that just like it blows my mind that there aren't more injuries, I guess, in the human body whenever you
Mhm.
push it to its limits. Um, and maybe it's just because like in the Olympics and when you're training the national team, a lot of people cover up injuries because they still want to compete and they push through it because, and I don't blame people that do for not wanting to talk about it because you're at such a high level, you've worked your butt off your entire life to get there. Um, but it can still be it can be a difficult thing to accept. You were mentioning before that there's people on that that have had that pushing through hamstring injuries and other things like that. And you get a Charlie horse when you're sitting down at a desk and it hurts like crap, like you know.
Yeah.
Um, and you're kind of dealing with something yourself right now. I don't know if you
Yeah.
want to delve into that a little bit, but um,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Absolutely. I think, you know, professional sport, and as you get older, right, like your body just transitions. And what we talked about earlier today is, putting on different weight, adapting to a new sport, changing your body. There's inherent risk that occurs with that. And so kind of for me and what a lot of my teammates are dealing with is just overuse injuries, really. We see a lot of hamstring, a lot of um, for me, I'm dealing with a foot injury. A lot of it's just because you're running, sprinting, jumping 6, 7 times a week with maximum volume, trying to push very heavy objects when maybe your body doesn't have the foundation from youth of doing this particular sport. And
Hmm.
what you talked about is very true. I think when people have a goal and a dream of something they want to accomplish, I see it in the Marines too. We will hide signals that our body is truly in pain, because we have goals and we know that we can't slow down. And the hard part is, and something that I'm dealing with right now with my foot injury is, if I would have listened to my body, I could have prevented it. However, what makes us unique as Marines, as bobsled athletes, is the grit that we push through and we persevere. What we perceive as weakness, and maybe that's being away from our families. Maybe that's sacrificing career decisions to do something that most people will never even know that you're doing in the first place.
Yeah.
Let alone, our bodies being like, no, we can push harder. And there's times when you need to be able to slow down. There's times when you do need to push through. Oh, this hurts versus no, like this is painful. There's a difference between soreness and injury, right? Pain, soreness. There's a little bit of,
Hmm.
trying to figure that out, and no one knows it but you. And so just, a message to anyone out there listening, push yourself. I love it. I crave adrenaline and pushing myself and new weightlifting and pushing and training and all that stuff. But your body's also all you have, and you have one of them. And so you can't sustain that effort if you're not taking care of it. And for me, I had to be reminded of that in a hard way. And so if we can prevent that, then we should. So you can maintain pushing and being that
Mhm.
incredible athlete for a longer longevity than a short amount of time.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And it just with your foot injury, um, when you emailed me that, I was just like in my mind, and I'm not even at that level of athleticism, uh,
Mhm.
but I can only understand like, or I can only try to understand the idea of how many years you've trained, and again, you've shared that journey of gaining that weight that for you was it's a hard journey, and all of that kind of flashed in my mind, and and I kind of want to shift into kind of talking about how we were discussing opening doors and such. But I, in that moment, I didn't share any details. It's not my story to tell, but I've got a good group of accountability guys that are guys and girls from First Form that we share our macros and our progress and things like that we're doing, and our goals. But I just texted him. I was like, hey, not going to share too many details, but someone at a really high level just got injured. And every single one of them is a person of faith. And I
Mhm.
was like, just, I'm not going to provide details, but send out a prayer for this person.
Mhm.
And every single one of them was like, they all, because they were all athletes at one point, could understand the pain in
Mhm.
some sort of way that you could be feeling at that time. So with that being said, I don't talk a lot about faith
Mhm.
as much as I probably should. And I'm going to be getting into that more on the podcast, but it is a pillar. I do bring it up as often as stories permit, or conversations. But I kind of want to end on that note, on faith. You
Yeah.
brought it up as you're a faith-driven person,
Mhm.
and you feel that God has put these doors in front of you. And
Mhm.
the other thing too, and I know I'm going on all these different tangents, but the other thing too is that you didn't just look at the door and say, "Oh, that's nice, thanks God," and then like turn the other way, right? A lot of people do that as well. And you've recognized that you've got talents and skills that have been forged over, your short life up to this point, um, that you can help benefit others. And you're taking that and you're putting action behind your faith. You're not just looking at it and saying, okay, thanks, and then turning the other way, but you're going through and pushing harder and harder. What, I guess, where did faith start for you in your life?
Mhm.
And uh, have you struggled with it at all in your life?
Yeah, so I was raised Catholic. Um, so I didn't like going to church. I went to church because I had to. I learned all the prayers. I memorized it. I sat there. I was like, this is boring. I hate this. Um, and I never fully understood or grasped faith because I never felt like I had an option to. I felt like it's something that you had to do. And I quickly fell out of faith when I went to college. And I think that what's happened to a lot of people, right? You're on your own, you make decisions for your own, and that's what leads you. And I had two teammates in college that were extremely strong Christian women, and they're my best friends. And you could always tell there was something different about them, the way they carried themselves, the kindness they displayed to every people, the kind of athletes they were, how they listened to you, how I was a freshman and they were upperclassmen and took me under their wing. And I'm like, why are you nice to me? Like it never made sense to me. And I realized quickly in college, similar to the resume, I had everything you could possibly think of that you would want. I was starting as a freshman. I was 4.0 GPA. I had a full time job. Yeah, everything that at the time as an 18-year-old you think that you wanted. I was going to officer candidate school. I had summer lined up. Like there wasn't arguably there's nothing I didn't have. I had a loving, supportive family, best friends, everything, and I still felt like something was missing. And I was voicing that. I'm like, why do I feel like there's something else? What am I not achieving? Like, and in my head, I was like, well, if I keep getting more and more accolades, that will fulfill me. And it never did. And so I just, was talking to them one day about it, and they're like, "How about you go to church?" And I was like, "I already tried this thing. I tried the God thing. It didn't really work out for me based off of my experiences." And they're like, "Well, just try it." And I finally gave in one day, and I was like, "All right, God, like, I'll give you a shot again. Why not?" And I went to church, and it was non-denominational. And it was just basically just reading out of the Bible, and my life from that very moment changed forever. I was probably the most stubborn, resistant person for it because I like to think at the time that I could do everything on my own. And the Lord quickly worked on my heart and really renewed me from the inside out. All of a sudden, the way I started talking, I don't curse anymore. I used to curse like a sailor. I know. Before the Marine Corps, I stopped cursing before the Marine Corps.
Wow.
So people look at me like I'm crazy, but I'm very careful with my tongue. I dress differently. I started hanging out with my friends differently. I started having a different perception of the world, and my whole life changed for it. And I will never look back from that day when the Lord decided to continue to give me a chance. And I ended up being involved with Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I ended up now, working with the pastor here with our team, and making sure we're doing Bible study and we're in the right frame of reference. But everything that I've had would not have been possible without God. There is no Riley without God. He has given me and provided me everything. And I'll be the first to say, how did this happen? How are you an active duty Marine and a bobsledder? I say God did. I did not do this. Like, and
Hmm.
and there's too many what people want to call coincidences, or too many easy access points that I'm like, the Lord opened doors and led me through them. Now, your second question, have I struggled with faith? Oh, yes. Just because I make this argument to people, and this is what people don't understand. My life has gotten harder since I gave my life to Christ. In the sense of, now I know my expectations. I know what's asked of me. I know, and I hear his voice based off of reading and what, like, praying for my enemies, being content in all circumstances, not trying to do things on my own, walk in his stride, have patience, be kind and loving to all people, regardless of how they treat you, right? All of these things that I don't feel like it's a rule book, it's a way of life that I want to uphold. But also the challenges that I faced, and injuries and setbacks. And you're not having me on the podcast because of how many times I failed, but there has been more times that I've failed than I've succeeded. And the Lord has taught me so much through the failure, through the hardships, through the adversity, that I'm still trying to navigate. And I am not a perfect Christian. I do not have it figured out. And I praise God for the glory and mercy that he gives me and all of us every day. But I will tell you my life and why I have what I have. If anyone's like, well, what's the secret? It's your relationship with the Lord. And my relationship doesn't look like your relationship, doesn't look like the next one. It's not a religion, it's a relationship. And being able to give your life to him and admitting that you're not in control and walking in stride with someone else is the most beautiful thing. And I just think of the Bible study we just had this week of talking about Matthew, and Matthew chapter 11, when it talks about, my my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And come to me who are weary and full of burdens that need rest. And that's what
Hmm.
he's given me, through this injury, through all these things. Sometimes I feel like I'm losing my mind, and I have to realize I'm not the one in control, and I work in strides.
Hmm.
And then I meet other brothers and sisters that are the most encouraging, kind, loving individuals that I couldn't do life without either. So I praise God for this community. Just encouragement. I'm so glad we get to talk about faith. I think it's something that people shouldn't be turned off to, in the sense of, like, if you're not a believer, that's okay. I'm not going to look at you any differently. I'm not going to try to force my beliefs on you. I just want you to know what makes me me, just as I want to know what makes you you. And I think there needs to be conversations to this day of, it's not about proving right or wrong. It's about actually listening, and just listening to
Hmm.
understand. And in my
Exactly.
travels, I've lived in Kyrgyzstan in the Middle East with a Muslim family. I'm just like, hey, just teach me, like, what values, what drives you guys? Okay, well, can I share mine as well?
Hmm.
Because I want to understand each other. I'm not trying to change. I'm just trying to throw it out there. And I just really think too, um, this world is broken. It's full of hardship. It's full of adversity that will never change. Um, Being a Christian doesn't make that any easier, but it's given me purpose and understanding and peace, regardless of the chaos that's going around me. So if anyone's listening, we're two resources that we just want to love on you. We want to pray for you.
Hmm.
Very rarely do people say no to prayer, because what's the worst that happens, right? Like, you don't even know we're doing it. Um, but yeah.
No, I definitely agree with you on that. And just to kind of wrap up there, I don't know if you've heard the story of the man that had a dream, um, and I'm gonna paraphrase here, but basically, he was walking along the beach with Christ. Have you heard this story?
I think so.
Okay, so he's walking along the beach with Christ. They're just reviewing his life, and he's going through his different stages, and then they get to a spot where there's only two sets of footprints instead, or
Mhm.
one set of footprints instead of two. And that happened to be at the guy's worst moments of his life. And the guy says, why did you leave me during these times? And Christ looks at him and he just says, I was carrying you.
Mhm.
Those are my footsteps. And so I'm a firm believer in that. And some people, it takes them getting to rock bottom before they find Christ. And for other people, high achievers like yourself, you can feel unfulfilled when
Mhm.
you've achieved everything. And there's still going to be that gap there. So I appreciate you sharing that. That's something that um, I talk about. I never shy away from, but it's not everyone's favorite topic, and I'm not a religious podcast, but I absolutely firmly believe that God opens doors for us. And so hopefully everything goes well with your recovery, and we'll be seeing you competing in 2026. That's the goal, right? So with that being said, is there anything else you want to leave with the audience before we end this?
Yeah, no, I just always end with this. Thank you guys for giving me a platform to just share my story. Thank you for listening. And I always make myself available. I do have to put a small disclaimer. I am only on Instagram, and there's only one Instagram account. So if you go to it, Riley.Tejcek, you will find me. I would love for you guys to follow along with my story. And if any of you guys have any questions, that's the best way to contact me. DM me, email me. I actually always respond as long as it's appropriate. So please reach out. I would love to continue to answer any questions that you guys may or may not have, or just if you guys liked it, let me know. That'd be cool. Or let Jonathan know. Either one of us,
Oh yeah,
that'd be awesome. But we're
yeah.
here for you, and we appreciate you guys listening. And thank you for allowing us to have a space to do that.
No, of course, and thank you for coming on. And I do want to just say too, I do know that people like yourself that achieve a lot. There's a reason why I brought you on. It's not just because flashy success. I know there's failures behind. I may not know all the failures, but I do know that to get to the level of success that you've got, there's been failures that you've had to pick yourself up from. So I may not know them all, but I do know that they're there. So that's definitely a big reason why I wanted you on. So thank you for sharing your story. Again, looking forward to your future and seeing how you compete. And then once you guys win the gold in 2026, we're going to bring you back on so you can show that shiny gold medal
Deal.
off.
Deal.
Yeah. But thanks so much, guys. I'm going to leave the links down below so you can go find Riley and follow along with her journey. Reach out to her with any questions you may have. And again, thanks so much for tuning in. And like I always say, guys, get out, live your life, and love it.